Thanks, John. Well, with the current influx of 10,000 refugees from Syria entering our country and a promise of 15,000 more in a couple of months, a lot of communities have been finding ways to make the thousands of newcomers welcome in our country. One ministry who has been doing this for the past 9 years, almost 10, is Micah House, a place that welcomes newly arrived refugee claimants to Hamilton with God's love by providing safe shelter, assisting with settlement, and creating connections into the community. Reverend Scott Jones is the executive director and joins me today. Welcome, Scott.
Hi, thanks.
I'm so happy to have you here today. Tell us about Micah House and why did you guys decide to create this place, this amazing place?
Well, thanks. Actually, it is a little bit before my time.
Yeah.
However, just around the turn of the century, seems kind of funny to say that.
Yeah, exactly.
But there were different groups that God was really moving in their heart to recognize refugee claimants in the city of Hamilton in particular. And there was no other ministry, there was no one giving this group of people attention. And then these groups, rather miraculously, found one another and they started gaining some very, very serious momentum. And really, Micah House came out of that.
And so why create a house? I mean, you could have had some sort of a social agency of some sort. Why create a home?
Well, they did a little bit of looking into things because they had the same question. They were wondering, what is the best thing to provide to this particular group of people? And, through some focus groups and some casual polling of different churches and people that did have experience with refugee claimants, they realized that a house, a place of temporary shelter, was going to be probably number one on the list. In particular, because when families arrive, they often get split up between shelters, and that's another trauma that they really just don't need.
So you found a house, and I've been to Micah House a couple of times and blessed to be there. And there's a story about how the community also around this home really rallied together and just welcomed this home and said, yeah, we want this to be here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And literally on our street too, I mean, there was people that were unsure, about having this kind of facility in their midst, sort of a, just east of downtown kind of a place. And it's like, do we really need that kind of thing, as our neighbor, But I think we've really convinced a lot of people that the newcomers that we are called to serve have been, they're wonderful. And the more they get to know them literally on the street and in our neighborhood, it's been fantastic. And not to mention the church community, which has been obviously a huge blessing to us.
And we talk about the church community because really Micah House exists because of churches partnering with you guys.
Absolutely. We couldn't do it without, that's our main sources of volunteers. And frankly, right now, because of the conditions that we're talking about and experiencing, we are, if I may say, overwhelmed with volunteers. And it's almost a little much to know how to manage all the people that are so willing to come alongside us.
Interesting. So you're saying that because of this Syrian refugee situation, that more people are just being compassionate and wanting to partner with Micah House.
They are, yeah, and it's a blessing, but it's
how do I manage all these people? Yeah,
a little bit of that.
Yeah,
a little bit of that.
So throughout the almost 10 years, you're celebrating your 10th anniversary this coming year, 2016. You have helped 700 people. 700 people have been throughout Micah House. That is amazing.
Yeah, well, thank you. We are kind of a smallish facility, right? We house about a dozen people at once, and they stay about 2 months on average. So to some of the bigger institutions, 700 after 10 years might not seem like a lot, but I think to us it is. We've impacted that many people, I hope, for God and for their life as they take those steps in Canada.
And so how would, a new refugee family coming to Canada, how would they get connected with Micah House?
Well, more and more now, Maggie, it's word of mouth because the communities that we've been able to impress ourselves upon are vital and growing in Hamilton. And so people will show up from all over the world and people within their own cultural community will say, oh, you need Micah House. So that's kind of a neat thing. But we do have, we've got friends at the border, Fort Erie, Windsor, even we've seen some really neat things happen even at Toronto Airport, getting references to us. And sometimes we're not even quite sure how or why that happens, but we've seen some really miraculous things happen that way.
So are you saying that your doors are kind of open and people just kind of find you? Is that...
Yeah, they do. I mean, of course, the internet as well.
Right.
That's very helpful. But sometimes it's from other shelters. People will show up at a different shelter, and those shelters will say, you know what, you need Micah House. You're someone who's going to be claiming refugee status. Let's call them, because we have maybe a little more expertise in that particular area.
And so once the family, gets connected with you and is welcomed into Micah House, what is then the process? So you have a short amount of time that they can spend there, but they have to find a home somewhere else eventually.
Yeah, that's right. It's quite a lot. They're going to be busy people, and I think that they're certainly looking for a little bit more rest, and I hope we do provide that at Micah House. I hope we give them that space. But there are timelines, like the clock is ticking. Mm-hmm. So we do need to help them with a lot of their documentation. Of course, we're not lawyers, mm-hmm. But we can step into those areas a little bit, point people in the right direction. Translation's huge. Facilitating all that sort of thing, whether it's a verbal translation or it's written interpretation, or vice versa. We need to make sure that people understand the process they're entering into.
And how huge is that when, I just think of being new to a country, knowing absolutely nothing about the process, not knowing what to do next, to be able to come into a home and a loving home and a loving environment, and to be able to walk alongside somebody as they go through that process and to tell them where to go and what to do. That's huge for a newcomer.
I think so. I mean, a lot of the people we meet, and I dare say all the people we meet, hospitality is really, really important to them. Yeah. So to be able to express that to them as well, they're so appreciative, and it's just clear from the way that they interact with us.
Now, I know when I was there, you had a baby shower, for a number of baby showers for a couple of the residents there. And I love that, just that extra little touch. I know that you encourage people to come and host Sunday dinners. So talk about some of those programs that you have where you get to include the outside community to really just make friends with these newcomers to our country.
Yeah, well, the meal program that we have is really big. I mean, everybody, doesn't matter where you're from, food is important. Yes. And you get to experience the flavors of different countries and all sorts of things. So we do a lot around programming, even just with meals. But yeah, we try to celebrate birthdays. We try to celebrate, certainly if someone would get accepted, have a positive from their hearing. These are things we try to celebrate. And baby showers. I think when you were there, that was, we had about five or six kids that year that we were celebrating baby showers at Micah House, and they're well received, and we always invite people to come in and join and be a part of those celebrations.
Speak to some of those families who will be welcoming Syrian refugees into their homes, into their communities. What are some things that they could do, just to make people feel welcome as they enter into a new country and a new world, essentially?
Sure. Well, I mean, there's a couple of things that I would say I've learned over the years. One of the things is, whether it's the Syrian folks or maybe it's somebody else in your community, I would say, off the top, don't ask them why they're here. It's hard enough, right, for them to be reliving those kinds of situations. And the more you get to know them, those kinds of things will come out. And you can begin to offer things like prayer. That's the other aspect of this, is a lot of people are very, very willing to receive our prayers, regardless of their faith. So that's very encouraging as well. So I would say, don't be afraid to offer to pray for people. I think that's huge. And the dialogue that you can have, too, is so something we're not used to, I guess you'd say, in the West or in North America, because you can talk about spiritual things with a lot of different people from all over the world, whereas we would see that as a bit of a taboo. Don't talk about your salary or politics and religion. There's things that you don't talk about. But I would say, again, the people that we're blessed to serve usually openly are quite willing to talk about spiritual matters, and that's an opening, that's an opportunity.
And that's a great point, because Micah House doesn't only welcome Christians into your facility. You welcome everybody in. How's your life been touched by just making new friends through what you do every day?
Oh, fantastic. I mean, I kind of look at Micah House as sort of like the church, you know, and that's how I see it. And my congregation, if you will, or God's congregation at Micah House, changes a lot, you know, and there are people there that otherwise maybe won't walk through the doors of a church facility, and so there are opportunities. So that's changed my perspective on things, to see that there are people that are willing to be prayed with and prayed for, regardless of their background, and we can have those kinds of dialogues. For me personally, it's been, you know, you think about passages like perfect love drives out all fear. Yeah. And I think to myself, I think what working at Micah House has done is exposed in me more fear than I thought that I had coming in. And then to realize that I don't have perfect love. That's not me that the Bible's describing. I don't have perfect love even for my own family. I'm just not that good. So it's God, it's the Holy Spirit, it's His love that will drive out all fear. So it's something that I continue to learn.
Well said. I think all of us can resonate with that. Thanks again, Scott. And Micah House has a website?
We do, yeah, just the www.micahhouse.ca.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You don't need any more volunteers.
I wouldn't go that far.
Their door's always open. Yeah. Thanks again, Scott.
Thanks, Maggie.